On a dusty battlefield in Montana lies a 125-year-old mystery. Legend says one of the greatest acts of military bravery took place here, when George Armstrong Custer made his heroic last stand. And yet, because no soldiers with Custer survived, no one really knows what happened. Now, for the first time, archaeologists are unraveling the secrets of Custer's last stand. They are treating the battlefield like a crime scene, using the tools of forensic science. Bullets and cartridges reveal what kind of firepower was used on the battlefield. Bones tell them who these soldiers were and how they suffered. Now, after almost 2 decades of research, these forensic detectives believe they know what really happened at the last stand. For evidence long hidden on the battlefield may tell a story very different from the history books. Now, science re-examines Custer's last stand on Unsolved History.
On a Sunday in 1876, hundreds of Sioux and Cheyenne warriors converged on this field and annihilated 5 companies of the 7th U.S. Cavalry and their leader, George Armstrong Custer. A recent investigation by a leading battlefield archaeologist proposes a provocative new theory of what may have happened during those desperate moments of Custer's last stand.
(1876). It is a decade after the Civil War, and America is making its great expansion westward. To clear the way, tribes on the Great Plains are being placed on reservations. But a group resists, and George Armstrong Custer is sent to help bring them in. On June 25th, he leads the nation's foremost frontier fighters, the 7th Cavalry, into a Native American camp along the Little Bighorn River. All we know for sure is that every one of his 210 men is killed.
The country was stunned. Custer, the hero of the Civil War, Custer and his whole regiment, the 7th Cavalry, the best Indian fighting regiment in the West, have been wiped out by essentially Stone Age people. Here we were a modern industrial nation, and this unbelievable anachronism occurred in the West.
Not a single soldier lives to tell the tale. But hundreds of books and over 50 feature films recount what may have happened. How the outnumbered men valiantly resist, stubbornly fighting to the last bullet. How Custer and his men die in a brave and noble last stand.
Custer was America's golden warrior, and now he was our martyr on the altar of manifest destiny. The myth of Custer's last stand, that gallant defense against a savage foe on the Western Plains, swept the nation.
And yet, no one could ever know if the legend of the last stand was true. Until a fire cleared the way for a forensic investigation. It is August 1983, and a blaze races through central Montana. It burns away acres of grass and sagebrush. For the first time in years, the Little Bighorn battlefield is exposed. When archaeologist Richard Fox is asked to survey the field, he recognizes the chance of a lifetime.
Just several days after the range fire, I walked this whole area and looked like a moonscape. The vegetation hadn't been affected for decades and decades and decades, and it was just a thick carpet. You couldn't see the ground. But after the fire, no problem. I found bullets and cartridge cases and bones.
Fox joins forces with Doug Scott, an archaeologist specializing in historic battlefields.
We treated every artifact we found as if it was a piece of physical evidence that might be found in a crime scene. Every piece was a clue.
They divide the battlefield into grids and scour over 600 acres.
We had no way of knowing what to expect on the very first day. But all of a sudden, the metal detector started singing. You couldn't believe it. It was one after another. Beep, 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 beep. People were so excited.
We have a 4570 bullet. The direction is south.
In all, the archaeologists will recover and map over 5,000 artifacts.
I've got it. That's 8162.
They find a soldier's Swiss-made pocket watch and a gold wedding band still on a finger. Spent and unfired cartridges. A foot, incredibly, still inside its boot. And a skull shattered by a blast from behind, as if it were an execution.
We don't change history. Custer died, but we see a richer depth to that story. We can see the personal level of hand-to-hand combat, the marks on the soldiers' remains, the cartridge cases, the bullets. They tell us where people fought, where those guns were used.
Over the next 10 years, they work like detectives and comb the field of combat. Using the techniques of forensic science, they reconstruct the battle step by step and shed light on one of history's greatest mysteries. Was Custer's famous last stand a protracted, heroic battle? Or a short, devastating rout? The archaeologists excavate at the battlefield. One of the first questions they want to answer is, who were the men who rode and died with Custer? The 7th Cavalry was said to be the nation's elite Indian fighters. And yet, remarkably little is known about most of these soldiers. The archaeologists find skulls, leg bones, and hands near where the fighters were originally buried. They send the bones to the laboratory of forensic anthropologist P. Willie. Willie often conducts autopsies for police investigating recent murders. Now, he will construct the first forensic portrait of Custer's men who fought at the last stand. He begins with their height.
What we're doing is measuring the bones to estimate the stature of the troopers. Do that by getting the maximum length and then plugging that into a formula.
The femur's length directly relates to height.
This femur was from a person who was about 5'6", which is in the range that we'd expect for the troopers.
The average trooper is 5'7". To reduce the strain on the horses, the cavalry rarely accepted anyone over 160 pounds or greater than 6 feet. Custer himself is tall at 5'11". Many of the troopers have missing teeth, the mark of years of poor dental hygiene in eating 10-year-old Civil War-era rations. Long hours in the saddle also leave a lasting mark on the soldier's vertebrae.
As you can see here, there's a depression that indicates that his spine was deteriorating, degenerating. The reason that they had these depressions is because they were riding months and months on tough saddles. Must have been extremely painful.
And when Willie estimates age, he finds yet another surprise.
The minimum age for enlistment was 21, but the skeletons indicated that there were a number of troopers who were younger than 21, in some cases years younger than 21.
The investigators have a new portrait of the fighters of the last stand. These men are supposed to be the nation's elite soldiers. Instead, they are as young as 17, malnourished, and in chronic pain. Custer's men are entering their last battle with a severe physical handicap. Coming up, what kind of firepower would Custer face on the battlefield? How well were his opponents armed? The surprising answer when Unsolved History returns.
On an all-new episode of Monster Garage, Jesse James is back in the driver's seat. Sit down! As he and his crew attempt to turn this school bus into a pontoon party boat.
We got some power.
But it's no love boat.
You know, I spent all week making this thing. You guys want to destroy it in a couple hours?
Man overboard. On an all-new Monster Garage. Monday at 8 Eastern and Pacific, only on the Discovery Channel.
Having quadruplets, we have a very busy schedule, so we shop for everything at Walmart. We get our tires here, too. I can leave the car there for an oil change, new tires, and go shopping. When you're picking out a tire, you need a name brand that you trust, and Walmart carries those, and I know I can trust their prices. We can get our car serviced, get all their toys, and still be home in time for lunch and naps. We have a little sticker in the back of our car that says quadruplets on board. I don't trust my children with just anybody, because it's precious cargo.
If Harry Potter goes back to school, he will be in great danger.
Warner Brothers Pictures presents the next chapter of Harry Potter.
The Chamber of Secrets has been opened.
Where the past will return.
Scared, Potter? You wish.
And the struggle for the future of Hogwarts will begin. Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Rated PG. The second year begins November 15th. Monster Garage, Monday at 8 Eastern and Pacific, only on the Discovery Channel.
Bad energy or bad allergies? When seasonal allergies drain you of your energy, Allegra can help. Only Allegra has fexofenadine, so unlike many other antihistamines, it won't make you drowsy. And Allegra gives you 24-hour relief. For people 12 and older, side effects are low and may include headache, cold, or back pain. Get back in balance. Talk to your doctor about switching to Allegra. Once daily Allegra. Real relief for real living.
What if the new Kia Sorento was in a race against the other SUVs? Who would win? The little ones would be left in the dust. Some just too honking huge. Others would be afraid of getting dirty. And the rest, they'd be distracted by the wads of cash we see. The midsize Sorento with a 10-year warranty won this unbiased race. After all, it is our commercial. The new Kia Sorento. Make every mile count.
Beyond science, beyond medicine.
There's absolutely no medical reason for this young man to survive.
Real tragedy, never-ending hope, and remarkable recovery. Watch a new Discovery Health Channel series, Only a Miracle.
There's a strong life force in all of us. I think if we nurture that, we can see a really remarkable outcome.
Watch Only a Miracle every Wednesday night at 9 on Discovery Health Channel. Real life, medicine, miracles.
Lifetime knows what women want, and our new network, Lifetime Real Women, delivers more of it.
She's a young woman now. She's dreaming her own dreams.
More true stories.
It's what you want for your daughters, and yet it's hard to let them go.
More real-life experiences.
There's just nothing like a daughter's love, a daughter and mother's love.
Lifetime Real Women, a new network from Lifetime. No one knows the world of women better.
Lifetime Real Women, now available on digital cable from Time Warner.
What if you could create your own primetime lineup? What if you could record all your favorite shows automatically? What if you could pause live TV when the phone rings?
Put your TV on your schedule. Automatically record shows to watch them when you want. The new digital video recorder from Time Warner Cable. Call Time Warner Cable today and get digital cable half price for 3 months, plus get free installation. Call 866-TWC-SC01.
Miles beneath the surface of the ocean, a killing machine has waited silently, patiently, for someone to unlock its secrets. This December, the wait is over.
My God, look at that.
James Cameron's next film is on the Discovery Channel. Expedition Bismarck. Coming in December, only on the Discovery Channel.
June of 1876. Custer and his men are heading on a 40-day journey towards the Little Bighorn. His command includes 31 officers and 566 enlisted men. He is also accompanied by 35 scouts. Most are Crow and Arikara, traditional enemies of the Sioux and Cheyenne. Custer pushes his men hard, eager to reach the Little Bighorn quickly.
A lot of people were nervous about Custer's attitude. He refused Gatling guns, he refused additional troops of cavalry, and he was determined it was to be a victory only for the 7th.
At daybreak on June 25th, Custer's men reach a high knoll. Barely visible in the distance, his Crow scouts sight signs of a huge Indian encampment. Among the scouts is Joe Medicine Crow's grandfather.
Custer jumped off his horse, took his field glasses and looked around, shook his head, said, "I can't see it." And the scouts said, "They're there." With their own naked eyes, they could see.
Hidden to Custer are more than 7,000 Sioux and Cheyenne, including the famed warrior, Sitting Bull. It is one of the greatest gatherings of Native Americans ever assembled on the plains. Leader of the Scouts, the half-Sioux, half-French Mitch Boyer, makes a dire prediction. He tells Custer, "Neither one of us will live." But Custer decides to attack. He splits his troops into 3 groups. Major Reno, with 130 men, will charge into the southern end of the Indian camp. Custer, with 210 men, will strike from the north. And Captain Benteen, with 125 men, will block an escape route. Moving closer, Custer reaches another high point. He can see now that his foes in the great village number in the thousands. But retreat is not in his nature.
Custer had taken off his hat and yelled to his men, "Hurrah, boys! We've caught them napping. We'll finish this up and go home to our station." So whatever he saw, he was not afraid of what was down there.
Custer sends a note to Captain Benteen, who is just a few miles away. He orders him to return immediately with his 125 men. But Custer does not wait for his reinforcements. Instead, he charges towards the river and the great village. And so begins Custer's battle of the Little Bighorn. As Custer heads into battle, what kind of firepower will he face? And what arms does he have to defend himself? The archaeologists search for clues to the weapons carried. They find over 1,000 spent cartridges. Many come from the 7th Cavalry's primary gun, the Springfield carbine.
This is one of the weapons carried by Custer's troopers at this battle. It's the model 1873 Springfield carbine. It was single shot, loaded with one cartridge at a time, and fired.
No gun was superior to the Springfield in distance, accuracy, or stopping power. They also find bullets from the cavalry's primary sidearm, the Colt 45, the most reliable of the time.
It held 6 cartridges, used for close-in fighting.
But what soon captures the investigators' attention are these: the non-government bullets and cartridges, the ammunition of the warriors. Now, the battlefield detectives will conduct a ballistic analysis to determine what weapons the warriors are carrying. They begin by cleansing the cartridges of a century of grime. Then, they take them to the Nebraska State Police Laboratory.
What we have are 2 long marks that are typical of the Henry rifle.
These are the firing pin impressions. Each model leaves a different mark.
Now let's look at this one. This is a single firing pin imprint, and it's wide and blocky.
It's the Colt Open Top 1872. They also find the Sharps carbine and the Spencer carbine. All told, they find over 47 types of guns. The warriors are much better armed than anyone ever suspected. Most surprising is that at least 200 of the enemy are armed with multiple shot weapons.
This is one of the repeating rifles used by the warriors here at the Custer battlefield. It's the known as the Henry repeating rifle. One of the features was the way that you had to load it. Held 16 shots through this open magazine tube.
Troopers' single-shot carbines are more accurate and have twice the range. But close in, a warrior with a repeater could get off 6 to 7 shots before a trooper could even reload. The ballistic analysis reveals what Custer is about to face at the last stand. Custer may think he has the technological edge. Instead, his enemy has frightening, devastating, and at close range, superior firepower. Unknown to Custer, he is entering the last stand, outgunned. Coming up, the Battle of the Little Bighorn begins when Unsolved History returns.
You're watching the Discovery Channel.
Stay tuned as Unsolved History continues with the truth about Custer's last stand. Then go inside the Britannic, the sunken sister ship of the Titanic.
We went on a Disney cruise with Mickey and Goofy. I had my own club and my mom had a mud bath with Daddy.
The ship had a great spa. It's no funny.
And guess what? At the island, Captain Hook was there.
You just get back?
That was a year ago.
That's my baby brother. His name is Joe, but Mom calls him a little souvenir.
Obviously, we all had a great time.
Disney Cruise Line. Come discover uncharted magic.
For his reunion party, his old tux still fit, but his old dandruff shampoo wasn't tough enough for black. So I bought a maximum strength Selsun Blue. It's doctor recommended and works fast.
Hey man, you're looking great.
Never wear black without the blue. Selsun Blue.
Our son kept bringing home stray animals, and not just dogs. Things were getting out of hand. We were so relieved when we bought Zoo Tycoon for our computer. It lets us create and manage our very own zoo. Now we can take the zoo home without taking the zoo home. Rated E for everyone.
You're watching the Discovery Channel.
Tune in tomorrow night to join funny man Terry Jones for a look at man's greatest invention, the city.
Trip to the city of your choice, free.
What? The city? How romantic.
Bringing along your friends,
I changed my mind. I changed my mind.
priceless. Win a getaway in MasterCard's Priceless Memories Sweepstakes.
And that's how I got here.
Good thing you did. These burgers are great.
That's because they're made with Spam. How do you make those? Well, I grilled up some Spam, sliced a tomato, grabbed some cheese and lettuce, and I put it all on a bun. I call it a Spam burger.
Wow, I'd sure like another one, but there's none left.
More Spam!
More Spam!
Crazy tasty! On an all-new Monster Garage, Jesse James and his crew attempt to turn this school bus into a pontoon party boat.
Guys need to shut up and get to work.
An all-new Monster Garage, Monday at 8 Eastern and Pacific, only on the Discovery Channel.
It is approximately 3:24 in the afternoon of June 25th, 1876, and here the Battle of Little Bighorn hangs in the balance. George Custer and two of his scouts have ridden to this promontory to look down on the valley floor and reconnoiter what's going on. He has divided his command into 3 battalions. Earlier, Major Reno has crossed the river, come across the valley floor, and attacked the lower end of the village. He's fully engaged now. Captain Benteen is in the back trail, nearly 3 miles, and behind them, the pack train itself. George Custer is here with 5 companies of cavalry just over this ridge. But it is here he sees for the first time the extent of the village. It stretches nearly 3 miles down the valley floor along the banks of the Little Bighorn. It is the largest gathering of Plains Indians in the history of the West.
The popular legend of the Last Stand begins with Custer charging to the river to attack the huge village. Here, Custer is met by an overwhelming onslaught of the enemy, who drive him back up the slopes. Hopelessly outnumbered, the men stubbornly fight for hours until their ammunition runs out, and the last man dies in a heroic last stand. Now, the historic detectives will examine the legend of the last stand, step by step. The first question is, what happened at the river? Was Custer attacked by a large force of Indians and placed on the defensive from the very start? The archaeologists scour the ground along the river. Fox believes that the number of cartridge cases will reveal the size of the battle. But here, they find only a few remnants of a fight.
Our archaeological work found hardly anything related to the battle. A couple of bullets and a couple of cartridge cases. This is certainly contrary to the heroic legend that Custer's battalion was met at the ford here and driven by hordes of Indians to the killing fields. But the archaeology says no.
But Fox doesn't just rely on archaeology. He backs up his work by studying long-ignored eyewitness testimony recorded by Western anthropologists. He finds confirmation there was no great battle at the river.
Here's an account by He-Dog, a Lakota Sioux. There was no fighting while Custer down near river. 15 or 20 Sioux on east side of river, and some of soldiers replied, but not much shooting there.
So what happens at the river? Fox believes that Custer takes half his men down to the river, but finds the village nearly empty. The warriors had left in one direction to battle Reno, and the women and children had fled in the other direction to find safety. Custer heads back up the ridge and makes a choice. He will chase the women and children.
Custer's objective was to return the Indians to the Great Sioux Reservation. Capture the women and children, you render the warriors impotent, and you can take care of the village later. But the main focus, the non-combatants.
It is a radical rethinking of the battle. Custer now elects to pursue hostages. So Custer makes a second trip to the river. He eventually approaches the women and children, but finds there are far too many for him to handle. And he heads back up the opposite end of the ridge, empty-handed. Now the archaeologists scour the ridge above the river to determine Custer's next move. Here they find hundreds of battlefield artifacts, buckles, horseshoes, spurs, and cartridges. Using historical records and mapping the position where each artifact is found, the formation of the soldiers becomes clear. Custer's 210 men are now spread out on the ridge over a mile apart in 3 locations: Calhoun Hill, Custer Hill, and a reserve area known as the Keogh Sector. As the afternoon of June 25th progresses, more and more warriors approach. Coming from the south, they concentrate around Custer's men at Calhoun Hill. There, at around 4:30, the first major fighting erupts. "125 years later, the archaeologists track the firefight.
On Calhoun Hill, we found something like that which is represented here. The flags marking where cartridge cases were found, each from a different soldier. Now, the linear distribution provides us with a really good clue of what's going on. This is a skirmish line.
A skirmish line is a standard dismounted cavalry formation with soldiers positioned 15 feet apart. The warriors fire. Custer's men shoot back without panic. Below the Calhoun skirmish line, the archaeologists locate a major warrior position.
This area is called Greasy Grass Ridge.
It was here that many 44 and 50 caliber cartridge cases that were used by the Indians were found. And it was here that the Indian warriors could pop up and fire at Calhoun soldiers, and then they'd come back down to be out of the line of fire. And literally this whole ridge was covered with cartridge cases.
They began to get closer and closer to the soldiers on the ridge. They darted from sagebrush to sagebrush, from fold to fold. Eventually, warriors throughout this area got very, very close to the soldiers' positions.
One company is sent to drive the Indians back. But the warriors launch a devastating countercharge. The company collapses. Emboldened, the warriors press their attack. Panic and fear spread to the skirmish line.
Nearby the skirmish lines, we found cartridge cases clustered together. The soldiers became fearful, and they abandoned the skirmish line and began to bunch together.
The command and control was lost, and the herding instinct took place, and they bunched up, which is not what you do in combat if you want to maintain control and keep a good steady fire.
The government defense disintegrates. Armed with superior close-range firepower, the warriors overrun Calhoun Hill. Custer's first position has fallen. The archaeologists continue to track the battle. In groundbreaking work, they employ the same technique police ballistic units use at crime scenes. They follow the cartridges.
After a gun is fired, the cartridge case is ejected. The combatant moves to another position, reloads, and the process is repeated. So you can see that we can trace the path of someone across the battlefield if the firing pin marks on the base of the cartridge case match.
The battlefield detectives painstakingly examine the firing pin impressions of each shell. These large marks indicate the model. But zoom in, and there are microscopic marks. Each gun has its own pattern, a ballistic fingerprint. Match the marks and map the locations where they were found, and the precise movements of a soldier who fought at the last stand come into focus. Now, using this technique, they can see what happens as Calhoun Hill falls. A few lucky soldiers flee to Custer's middle position, the Keogh sector.
We have the soldiers' pathways represented. One soldier at Calhoun Hill firing a couple of shots and heading toward the Keogh sector, and another soldier firing a couple of shots and also moving into the Keogh sector.
The shells reveal a possible Indian pursuer close behind.
The lines over here indicate the movement of an Indian from Greasy Grass Ridge to Calhoun and into Keogh, and another warrior moving up toward the Calhoun, up past Keogh, and then down over here.
But like Calhoun Hill, Keogh offers little protection. It's a rout. In less than 30 minutes, 2 positions have fallen like dominoes, and the only one left is Custer Hill. The stage is set for the final onslaught, for what will be forever called Custer's last stand. Next on Unsolved History, The battlefield archaeologists reconstruct the final moments of Custer's last stand.
Forget the Alamo. That little shootout in Texas didn't happen the way they say. How do we know? Every week, forensic science is putting history to the test on Unsolved History, next Wednesday at 9 on the Discovery Channel, of course.
When you're a Walgreens customer, your complete prescription records are instantly available at thousands of locations nationwide. Which means that Nancy Whiting can pick up her prescription 3 blocks from where she lives, 2 floors from where she works, and 4 blocks from her sister's house in Florida, where she visits every winter. In fact, Nancy has to go pretty far out of her way to find a place that's not near one.
Now that is a delicious-looking bowl of pasta.
Please give our compliments to the gentleman at table 42. Grazie. Bravo, signore! Bravo!
Introducing Create Your Own Pasta from $7.99. Romano's Macaroni Grill. Life is delicious.
You're watching the Discovery Channel.
Custer's last stand? Get the real story as Unsolved History continues.
When you're trying to quit smoking, cravings for cigarettes can appear out of nowhere. Nicorette Stop Smoking Gum, used regularly, will help fight them off. If you encounter a really tough craving, you can take an extra piece of Nicorette. Nicorette helps keep cravings at a safe distance. Quit now for the Great American Smokeout, November 21st.
I love how he looks in his uniform, but his old dander shampoo wasn't up to black, so I bought him some Selsun Blue moisturizing shampoo. It's doctor recommended with aloe and moisturizers.
No more flakes, no more dry scalp. Never wear black without the blue. Selsun Blue.
Ready for a ghost story? Once upon a time, I designed the cars that defined an entire era of American style. And like all good ghost stories, this one has a sequel. My name's Harley Earl, and I've come back to build you a great car.
Somebody in here?
It's showtime.
Buick, the spirit of American style.
If you're in car insurance, don't watch!
Sunday nights are heating up on TLC. From the creators of Junkyard Wars comes the ultimate heavy metal road rage competition. 27 international teams battling through an automotive playground, where machines that take a month to build take only seconds to destroy. Join co-hosts Kathy Rogers and Henry Rollins.
This is Full Metal Challenge!
Full Metal Challenge, Sunday at 10 and Wednesday at 8 on TLC.
To the world. Experience it with high-speed instant access to the internet from Roadrunner. Roadrunner High Speed Online. Your world is always on.
The battlefield detectives have exploded myth after myth about the last stand. Now, they close in on the most critical question. Did the soldiers actually fight a protracted and organized battle? Or is the last stand one of history's greatest myths? It's almost 5 p.m. on June 25th. Half of Custer's men are dead. The last 100 or so soldiers are clustered on a small ridge known as Custer Hill. Now, the warriors close in.
They used the cover of the sagebrush, the hillocks, the ravines, all over this battlefield beautifully. as more men were down, the warriors were able to take advantage of the lessening firepower of the soldiers and get closer and closer.
Faced with this final assault, do Custer's men fight valiantly in a last stand, or are they quickly overrun? The archaeologists analyze the cartridges they find on Custer Hill. A large number would suggest a long, drawn-out, heroic resistance. A pattern like a skirmish line would reveal an organized stand.
Well, here on Custer Hill, we didn't find much in the way of government cartridge cases. A handful of Colt cases and a handful of carbine cases. But more importantly, there's no patterning in it, indicating that there was no tactical organization here, or very little.
Fox concludes that there are no large quantities of spent cartridges, therefore, no long battle. There is no pattern to the evidence, no organized formations. In short, there is no heroic last stand. The archaeologists have overturned more than a century of myth.
These soldiers were brave, but as so often happens, psychological debilitation plays a role. Panic and fear spread. We're dealing pretty much with chaos in a desperate situation.
It is pure terror as warriors unleash everything, from arrows to repeaters. Within minutes, most troopers on the hill lie dead or wounded. Now, the warriors rush in for the final kill. Unlike the legend of the last stand, the fight on Custer Hill is quick work. Fox finds confirmation from Indian eyewitnesses.
One Indian account tells us that it was just a few minutes. Another, no longer than it takes a hungry man to eat his dinner.
At the top of the hill is America's most famous Indian fighter, George Armstrong Custer. Today, marble memorials dot the Little Bighorn battlefield. They are a reminder of Custer's tragedy, and they may also be one last clue to what happened here. These memorials were placed where the soldiers' bodies were originally found. Some are accurate, some are not. In legend, the last fighting takes place on Custer Hill. But there is a line of memorials trailing down from Custer Hill to a deep ravine. Confirmed by warrior testimony, the researchers now believe that, as Custer Hill first comes under attack, some 40 troopers flee to create a diversion. Warriors chase many into the ravine, where they finally finish off the last of the soldiers.
So not only was there not an heroic last stand in the legendary sense on Custer Hill, the last fighting didn't even take place there. It took place in the ravine behind me.
Coming up, the horrifying aftermath of the battle, next on Unsolved History.
You're watching the Discovery Channel.
Coming up next, go inside the Britannic, the sunken sister ship of the Titanic, followed by the FBI files Cat and Mouse.
Hey Lisa, fill you up?
Oui, merci beaucoup. Ça serait très bien. What'll it be, girls? Deux œufs avec du jambon. Et aussi un bout de thé. 2 eggs and ham, Jimmy.
With the new American Express card, the things you buy every day can earn you double points with no expiration dates for incredible rewards.
I'm guessing we're in Paris by springtime. Bonjour!
So is the legend of Crockett really a crock? Tune in to discover the truth. Unsolved History, next Wednesday at 9 on the Discovery Channel, of course.
The Nokia 7210 phone. The new pocket translator. We make picture messaging easy so you can see your world in a whole new way. Nokia, connecting people.
What if the new Kia Sorento was in a race against the other SUVs? Who would win? The little ones would be left in the dust. Some just too honking huge. Others would be afraid of getting dirty. And the rest, they'd be distracted by the wads of cash we save. The midsize Sorento with a 10-year warranty won this unbiased race. After all, it is our commercial. The new Kia Sorento. Make every mile count.
You're watching the Discovery Channel.
Tune in tomorrow night to join funny man Terry Jones for a look at man's greatest invention, the city.
Our son kept bringing home stray animals, and not just dogs. Things were getting out of hand. We were so relieved when we bought Zoo Tycoon for our computer. It lets us create and manage our very own zoo. Now we can take the zoo home without taking the zoo home. Rated E for everyone.
Fred, where do you put all the emails I delete?
Fred, can we get together at 5 to talk about the computers any by tomorrow?
I know you only have a day on those servers, Fred, but it's a whole day.
Dealing with technology is hard. That's why CDW makes buying it as simple as possible with same-day shipping on thousands of products. Like the HP OfficeJet D145. It's a high-quality color printer, scanner, copier, and fax machine all in one. It even prints on 2 sides. HP and CDW. The right technology, right away.
For a million years, the Black Mamba has meant one thing: death. Tuesday at 8, on Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, Animal Planet ventures to the heart of Africa, joining specialist Donald Stridham on his hunt for the world's most notorious snake. Be one of the few who has been this close and lived to tell the tale of the Black Mamba on the next all-new episode of Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, Tuesday at 8, only on Animal Planet.
On June 27th, 2 days after Custer's defeat, the victors depart. Some survivors from Reno and Benteen's commands, who had been pinned down 4 miles away, now come down from their steep bluffs and stumble on the nightmare of Custer's defeat.
The survivors of Custer's regiment described it as a scene of sickening, ghastly horror. And it was certainly what it was. These bodies mutilated beyond recognition.
Soldiers find Custer's naked body at the top of Custer Hill, lying close to 5 of his officers.
He was not scalped. There was at least 1 bullet wound, gunshot wound to the chest, left breast, a gunshot wound to the left temple, and he may have had a thigh slashed or an arrow in the genital area.
No photographs record the scene, but an image of a cavalryman killed by the Cheyenne several years earlier reveals the harsh treatment the troopers received. Now, for the first time in the modern era, the investigators will examine the bones and document the battle wounds of the last stand.
This is a right hip bone. It has a gunshot wound that came in from the person's right and back side, entered the bone, and perforated right on through and kept on going.
This skull contains a particularly unusual wound. Willie suspects a warrior may have fired a small bullet in a larger caliber rifle, creating a wobbly projectile.
Bullet came in here, fractures radiated from the bullet hole, and the rectangular hole indicates that the bullet was probably tumbling when it hit the skull. Nevertheless, even if it was tumbling, it still had enough power to go through the brain and come out the other side.
But it is another soldier who may have suffered the most. A gunshot wound enters the back of his head and exits the front.
You get the impression the guy was down and a gunshot came in middle of the back of the head, kind of execution style.
He is also hit with a hard object like a stone axe, creating these fractures. Then, they begin literally cutting him apart.
In this view, these cut marks are indicating that they were trying to dismember the individual, to take the thigh out of the hip.
These rarely seen eyewitness drawings, made by the warriors who defeated Custer, vividly show the battlefield mutilation. What was the reason for such gruesome treatment? It was part anger and revenge, but it was also a ritual act, driven by cultural beliefs.
The reason that the Native Americans said that they mutilated the bodies was so that people, when they entered the next life, the afterlife, they would enter that life without fingers, without legs, without eyes. If you had an enemy in this life, you'd tend to have that same enemy in the next life. If he lacks a trigger finger, he's not going to be able to shoot you.
Willie's forensic work is documenting extensive mutilation. It is a chilling conclusion to the last stand. The end for Custer and his men may have been even more horrible than ever imagined. It has taken the forensic archaeologist's crime lab methods and skills of detectives to shatter one of the greatest myths of the American West. Today, we must change our view of Custer's men. Many were not elite soldiers, but young and inexperienced. We must change our view of the warriors. Far from primitive fighters, they carried the latest technology and used the terrain brilliantly. And we must change our view of what happened at the Little Bighorn. It was not a last stand, but a short, devastating rout. And yet, all we know can never change the enduring image of George Armstrong Custer, a brave man who fought and died valiantly for his country.
Custer's last stand, Custer's last rally. He's always going to be 36 years old, always dressed in those buckskins, always standing defiant on that western hillside. The perfect example of defiance, American defiance, in the face of insurmountable odds.
When the relief column arrived, it found the scattered and mutilated remains of Custer and his men here at Last Stand Hill. It laid the groundwork for endless speculation and debate. Surely what you've just seen is one of the most provocative accounts. As a historian, I'll reserve my judgment for this new theory, but continue my search for new trails for unsolved history.
You can get the Unsolved History program you just saw on home video. From ballistics to bone analysis to geomagnetic imaging, forensic science is now putting history to the test. For only $19.95 plus shipping and handling for each video, you can stay on technology's cutting edge. Have this episode of Unsolved History, nearly an hour in length, delivered to your door. To order, go to discovery.com or call 1-800-603-6743. Because there's no thrill like discovery.